Hello everyone, and welcome to this video. This is Joy, and today I'm going to be answering your questions as I illustrate my book Atheria, which is going to be out on Sunday, June 7th. So let's take a look at some of these questions, shall we? And I apologize, before I start, I want to say I apologize for, first off, any awkwardness, because this is an unscripted video. And two, I apologize for the lateness of this video because I had some things going on yesterday that led me to not be able to work on any sort of YouTube videos, and I had to also figure out some technical difficulties because I am just starting out on YouTube as well. So let's take a look at the first question. And you can submit questions. I'll be doing these probably bi-weekly or monthly, depending on how many I get. So let's take a look at the first question. You can submit these in the YouTube comments section or on my Wattpad page. Aaron Storm asks, Joy Everett 715, how do you get in the zone when you write? Do you listen to music or something else? So it's actually a lot of things that help me get into the zone when I write. First off, I write mostly in the morning. Which that doesn't work for everyone, but a lot of times for me it helps to write when I have when my mind is fresh and a little bit sleepy, because I am like a really grumpy morning person, and that sounds weird and dumb, but the more emotional I am, the better I am able to write. It's a weird thing. I don't know how many other writers are like this, but that's the way it works for me. I actually don't listen to much music as I write because I do sometimes, but it has to be instrumental music, because if it has lyrics, I just want to brainstorm about like scenarios in my books that could work with, those sort of lyrics. And so I have to listen to instrumental music if I do listen to music while I write. So most of the time what I do is I write early in the morning, and another thing that I do is I do a heck ton of brainstorming where I basically walk around the house or like outside or something like that. And walking is kind of a compulsion for me, so it's not exactly like walking is fine, like get your exercise, but like for me, walking is a compulsion. And so it's not actually the healthiest thing to do, but the upside to walking as a compulsion is that it does offer you a ton of brainstorming opportunity. So that's kind of what I do to get in the zone when I write. If I don't feel like writing though, I just don't do it, and like on a day where I do feel inspired, I'll just chug a ton of stuff. So I don't really write. I write on a fairly regular schedule, but like if a day I don't feel like writing, I'm not going to force myself to write, because that would probably make my writing quality not that sharp. So that's kind of how I get into the zone when I write. Let's look at the next one. Jester Jon Snow asks, Joy Everett 715, where do you most want to travel? A few places. So a while ago it was like somewhere in the Middle East, and I still really want to do that because that sounds pretty fun, even though the Middle East is not always the safest place for Christians, to put it lightly. I would like to go to the Middle East, probably somewhere like Dubai in the UAE. Another place I would really like to go someday is France, because I did research and I took some things from French culture, especially their language, for Atheria, and I really want to learn French someday. And so I just really like French language and culture and stuff like that. And so I definitely want to someday travel to France. Let me straighten that line out. Nana Banana 6543 asks, Joy Everett 715, how do you enjoy writing, or what makes you like doing it? I say this because I don't like it. People ask me this a lot, and I have to say this is probably not the answer people are wanting to hear. I actually don't really know. for some people, writing is something that they learn how to do. They learn how to do because of practice and discipline, and of course, like that's the case with any sort of craft, including like art and the like too. But writing for me is kind of an instinctual thing. It's like my mind is constantly working, and it's saying, so this is for fanfiction, which is what I've been writing since like 2018. I hope to, after I'm done with the Allura trilogy, I hope to write some original fiction content pieces. But for fanfiction, oftentimes what it'll spring out of is being dissatisfied with the way something went in fiction and stuff like that. And so the question I often ask myself is, if I were writing this story with this character that I'm obsessed with, how would I fix it so that it is the best it can be? You know what I mean? This is the case with the Allura trilogy. I was originally going to have Allura be a standalone book, and maybe I was tossing around the idea of writing Starwalker as a sequel to Allura. But then what happened was that we got season 5, and I don't want to crap on season 5 too much, because overall it's season 5 of She-Ra. For people who don't know, Allura trilogy, they're all She-Ra fanfictions about Light Spinner / Shadow Weaver. Anyway, so then we got season 5, and I don't want to crap on season 5 too much, because I thought it was mostly good. But I really didn't like the way that they handled Shadow Weaver. I'll spare you the big rant here. If you are interested in hearing my thoughts, let me know, and I might make a video about that, actually, because there are enough people interested in what I have to say on that I've considered doing a video and stuff on that. Anyway, so let's just say that for now, I was extremely disappointed with the way that they handled Shadow Weaver in season 5. And so I wanted to write these fan fictions to fix what went wrong, because I really didn't like the fact that she died. Like, I'm not one of those people who was like, Light Spinner shouldn't have been allowed to change, because, like, of course, I supported her redemption ever since, like, I saw her as Light Spinner. And so, for me, her death was kind of a slap in the face, especially since I kind of saw myself in her. I don't know if I should have, but I did. And so it was really a slap in the face to her. So I immediately started thinking a couple days after season 5, because at first I kind of wanted to cancel Allura, because it expands on the sympathetic aspect of Shadow Weaver that I saw in arc 2 of the show, seasons 2 to 3. And so I was like, how can I continue this trilogy with this character that I loved so much, but that was kind of wrecked at the end? How do I do that? But then eventually ideas started forming in my mind, and I found a way that I could fix it. I'm still trying to figure out the finer points of that, because season 5, I think the whole thing was a big mess. Again, let me know if you want me to talk more about season 5. But anyway, when I'm writing fan fiction, that's kind of where my mind usually goes, is if I were writing this trilogy, or if I were writing this show, what would I have done character-wise, plot-wise, etc., to fix what these things that I see as, like, gaping flaws in the story? I hope that answers your question. That was a pretty long answer. Let's see. Nana Banana also asks, how do you enjoy writing, or what makes you like doing... Or, sorry, my bad. I just said that again. Also, how do you get good at writing? I also say this because I'm bad at writing. How do you get good at writing? Many years of hard practice and discipline is what I would say, honestly. I think anybody can become a good writer if they set their mind to it. Just like anybody, even if you're not, like, naturally talented or whatever, you can become a good artist, good musician, good singer, that sort of thing. I think that it's important to have discipline. That's probably the biggest thing. I see a lot of people who are like, my story is terrible, but then you see that they haven't actually written anything for like, I don't know, like 3 years or something, and I'm like, dear, your writing could be so much better if you actually wrote something. And I'm not saying that it's perfect, because, none of us are perfect. But the biggest thing is to just keep writing, and then also to take feedback when it's given to you. I see too many people who are like, I can't take criticism on my writing because, because then I get discouraged and stuff. And I understand that, because I'm the same way about my art. I do not like other people criticizing my artwork, because it doesn't help me improve. But the difference is that I'm not planning to, like, become an artist for a living. You know what I mean? And so, taking criticism is also very important. Another thing is to, read books and think about, like, the parts of the story. Because I see, like, people don't think too critically about what they read, what they watch, that sort of thing. And that's fine if you're just a casual person. But if you're trying to replicate the story, that's kind of important to do. And so that would be my advice to somebody who's looking to get better at writing, is basically, in summary, write a lot. Like, I would say write something every day, even if it's just you pouring out your thoughts onto a sheet of paper. And then take criticism when it's offered to you, because that's really the only way you're going to grow. Amberlynn Ryder asks, how do you get into writing in the first place? And what do you do to plan out your novels before you actually write them? So I actually, this is pretty funny, but it's also kind of embarrassing. I got into writing because when I was 8 years old, when I was like 8, 9, 10, even 11, 12, maybe 13 years old, something like that, I was obsessed with Super Mario Bros. And, that's like the last thing anybody would think of to write a fanfiction about. But I was especially into the RPGs, like the Mario and Luigi games. I remember playing Bowser's Inside Story on the DS. And I also really liked the Paper Mario games, especially Super Paper Mario, because of its cool story. And so I wrote little fan fictions about them, and I added so much to the world that it was almost really my world. And some days I've thought about, like, I don't remember much of my own world, because I lost all my first writings of Super Mario Bros. Fan fictions, because when I was 8, we moved to another city, and I think that my notebook might have gotten lost in the move. Anyway, so I got into writing because I was obsessed with Super Mario Bros. Then my attention shifted to My Sims fanfictions. I don't remember writing anything original until I was 11. And when I was 11, I attempted a paranormal, like, ghost story that I abandoned because I realized, like, I'm a Christian. I probably shouldn't be writing about this stuff. The first full original novel that I completed, I want to say it was either Free to Be Brave, which is still a draft on Wattpad if anybody's interested in me, like, posting my old work. It's really badly written, but it was one of my first works. Or Scarlo's Story, which is another kind of badly written work. And my first novel that's still up on Wattpad is The Last Kai Molly. So that's how I got into writing. As for how I plan out my novels, I actually have a model that I'm probably going to post in the description to this video, because I actually didn't plan out my novels at all until Allura. But planning out Allura helped me a ton. I planned out, so first, here's what I remember from my rough outlining process. First off, I planned like a very rough outline of the plots. So I would do like a few main rising action plot points, the exposition, obviously the climax. You have to. Okay, I'm gonna detour real quick. If you are a pantser, even if you're a pantser, you have to know your climax before you start writing. If you don't know your climax, like, I don't know how to help you, and I don't blame you if your story, like, doesn't make any sense. You have got to know your climax before you start writing. Anyway, so first I did a very rough outline of the plot. Then I did these things called character plots, which is basically where you try and get to know your characters. You do, like, those cute little character maps. And those actually, like, some people say that makes your characters too robotic, but in Allura, like, my characters evolved past those. Those were just the starting points for how I developed them. And I got the main, I mean, obviously, I'm writing canon characters, so for me it's more a matter of observation sometimes. But, you know, when I finished writing my characters' plots, they evolved past those in the actual draft of the book. And they're not really the same today as they were in October when I prepared for NaNoWriMo. And then the next thing I did was I did a more thorough outline of Acts 1 through 3. So, you know, I'll make a detailed map and put it up about, you know, the steps that I took to outline this. But for now, Acts 1 to 3, like, zooming in on each plot point in each act really helps, and, like, developing it and stuff, that really helps for, like, when important character beats are going to come and stuff like that. And then after that, I plotted out character arcs. Character arcs are, like, I think that character arcs might be the most important thing to plot out, because I see too many books that have they have interesting characters and, like, storylines and stuff like that, but the characters don't grow in any meaningful way, and so I feel like it feels like eating a Twinkie bar after I'm done reading the book. Like, it tasted good, but I didn't get a lot out of it. So character arcs, I plotted that out. I don't really plot out much in the way of world building. I did a little bit of world building for Allura because I had to. Unfortunately, Shira's magic system, it's kind of whack. Like, there are some basic points that are, like, hard and fast in the show, but the magic system isn't really well developed, and I get the sense it was an afterthought. Now, I love Shira. It's like my favorite kids show of all time, but the magic system is one of the weaker points of the show, and so I plotted that out. I also plotted out some things about Mysticor. But other than that, I kind of let the world building write itself. Oh, and I also made a map of Atheria. Please make a map if you're writing fantasy stories. It helps. It helps your readers a ton. So I made a map of Mysticor, but other than that, I kind of let the world building make itself, and it, like everything else in my outlines, it evolved and changed as I wrote each draft of Allura. Outlines, to me, are not supposed to be hard and fast. They're supposed to just be starting points. So my outlines, I plan them out, but my book looks almost, not unrecognizable, but better compared to the previous outlines. Let's take a look at the next one. Ninjosh4 asks, how do you get the motivation to actually buckle down and write during a monotonous part of a story that you're writing? That's a great question, honestly. I would say that what I do is, first off, I don't write if I can't focus on something. So I have several mental issues, and one of them is ADHD. And so if one day I'm feeling like I just can't focus on anything, I'm not going to force myself to write. If my mental health is poor, I'm not going to force myself to write. I think that if you try and force yourself to write, then you're going to have a pretty bad looking draft. And that's okay if you need to write for, like, rough drafts and stuff like that. I'm not saying that. But if you're in, like, the editing phase or even the rewriting stage, honestly, if you're feeling sick or you just don't want to write, then don't write. Now, there is one caveat to this, and that is oftentimes, for me, I find that my writer's block mostly occurs when my story has hit a rut. And by this, I mean the story is just, it feels like it's going nowhere, like something went wrong in the plot, and my subconscious is the only thing that picks it out and recognizes it, and it refuses to let me write anymore until I figure out what happened. And so during those times, I find that that's the most common thing, is that your story's taken the wrong direction, your subconscious has figured it out, your conscious self has not, and so your subconscious is refusing to let you move forward until your conscious figures it out. And so in this case, I think that it's really important to have what I call an alpha reader. And an alpha reader is somebody who is helping you through the process as you write, reading your draft as you write. They see all the flaws in your work. They see, the places where your story is great and the places it could be better. They read it from the rough draft on. And as you write, they give you suggestions. Oftentimes in professional writing, alpha readers will be like editors. And, having an alpha reader there to read your work, that is huge. And they can help you see maybe like where your story went wrong. Another thing that you can do if you don't have an alpha reader, I would say, is to take a week-long break. I always say, especially when you're rewriting, because rewriting, at least for me, is the most tedious part of the writing process. If you feel like your story is hitting a rut or you're bored with it, take a break between acts, like between Act 1, Act 2, Act 2. Act 1, Act 2.1, Act 2.2, Act 3, that sort of thing. That's honestly, I would say, the best thing that you can do. I did that while I was rewriting Allura. Every time I did, I came back to it and I was way better writing it. And I figured out what was going wrong with it too. So basically, don't force anything that you're trying to do. Try and let the story flow naturally. And that's honestly the best thing you can do, in my opinion. Nana Banana asks, which do you enjoy more, writing or drawing? Well, that's a hard question to answer because I actually really like both. I would say that it depends on the day. I have to enjoy both writing and drawing right now because I am illustrating Allura, as you can see. And, but I would say that I like to write more because in writing you can use all 5 senses to communicate, to your reader, what you want to say. That's something that art has the disadvantage of, is that you can't really do that. You can't really do that as much. You only have, like, the eyes and stuff that you're communicating to. But I do really enjoy both. I think that both are really good forms of art, and I enjoy doing both of them a ton. I alternate a lot between drawing and writing. Oftentimes I'll go many weeks without doing drawing, and then I'll do writing, and then between books I'll just crank out a ton of art pieces. One moment before and while I'm trying to get a reference picture for what I'm drawing, Nana Banana also asks, if you could have any superpower, what would it be? I would say, let me think for a moment. Probably, I would say shape-shifting. That's because I'm just thinking of Double Trouble from She-Ra and how cool they are with their shape-shifting and everything. And I think that would be a super lit superpower to have. And that's just really cool to me. Let's take a look at, I'm going back to the questions here. Pandyface Cockerbear asks, what is your writing system? How do you get it done? Do you have any tips? So if by writing system you're referring to like outlining and stuff like that, I answer that for Amberlynn. But if you're talking about just my writing process, so first what I do is I outline the book, and then usually what happens is I sit on it for at least a few weeks until I'm like ready to start drafting, because oftentimes my outline will change and I'll discover that, this thing, it makes way more sense than what I wrote down in my outline, and the outline will change, and then I'll let it sit for at least a couple weeks, and then I'll start writing after that. And then after I'm done drafting, I always let the draft sit for a minimum of 2 weeks, usually 3 or 4, because first off, writing rough drafts, I can binge write them, but then I also need a break. they're just harder to get done. They're just hard to get done. Writing's hard. Writing is hard. And then I'll rewrite, and that process, rough drafts usually take me like a month to do now that I have a system that I use for Allura, where I can just binge write the entire thing in a month. But then after that month-long break, I get to rewriting, and rewriting takes the longest out of anything because I am literally just revising the same scenes and the same chapters, and I'll change some things, but it's mostly the same ideas, and it's just boring to me. And I know it's necessary, and if you don't rewrite your novels, it's not that I don't respect you, but you're kind of an amateur, in my opinion, if you don't rewrite your novels before posting them. But man, rewriting can be drab. Another thing that so after I rewrite, I let it sit for another month or so, sometimes just a couple weeks. For Allura, I mostly did it for like, a few weeks or so, and then I got to editing and stuff like that. But then after that, then I read the book and I decide what scenes need to be added to the story in order for it to, for character arcs to be better developed, for themes to be better written, that sort of thing. And oftentimes what I'll discover is that I need to add like 10 or 15 more scenes. So the first week or so of this process is almost always, working on fixing scenes, adding scenes, that sort of thing. And then after that, what I usually do is I go through the book and edit it for like major changes to the story, like I'll add more internal monologue, that sort of thing. And that usually takes me a week, maybe 2 weeks, depending on how I'm feeling. And then after that, I'll send it to a beta reader, and my beta reader is going to usually be the same person. I got one that I'm going to keep for a while. And she'll look over the books, and she'll look over the book and tell me, hey, I think that this is working, but I think you need to make it work better, or you need to do better with your internal monologue or whatever. And those comments really, really help. And I would say beta readers are absolutely necessary for a book to be good. Editors in the professional world do the same thing, but beta readers at the very least, like, get yourself a beta reader if you haven't, or you're not doing it right, in my opinion. Then afterward, I apply some final changes, mostly to like, the flow and the phrasing of the sentences and stuff like that. And then usually what happens is I'll be done and I'll publish it after that. And of course, I'll continue to apply critiques, or like ask for critiques on my work after it's published. But that's largely because I think that it's important to know what's wrong with your published novels for next time. I get that it can be seen as discouraging if you're constantly getting beat down after you've worked on this thing for like 6 to 9 months. But your book is good. It just, in the future, watch out for this in your other books. And that honestly just really helps me to get better for my other books. So that's my writing process. I would say to have a plan. I'm not saying it has to be this strict writing process, because that can just be really really tedious. And those are my tips for a writing system. Nana Banana says, hi, I found your YouTube channel. One more question. How do you do animatics? So, animatics are kind of complicated. They're not that complicated, but they are a little bit complicated. I think that I'm going to do a video on this actually because a lot of people have been asking me this. It's just the problem is that I'm really awkward, unscripted, and so I'm not sure if it's the best thing right now for me to do animatic videos until I learn how to like speak non-robotically in a script. But animatics are like the trick is to know about like what animation is at its most basic form. Whether it's CGI animation or especially hand-drawn animation, which is like, animatics are basically storyboarding. So, that's the idea behind them. The idea is that they're just a bunch of pictures that, when drawn correctly, they create the illusion of movement. So the trick is to draw many pictures, and you don't have to redraw them from scratch every time because that gets tedious. But it's good to know. So, for example, I'm trying to think of how to explain this well. So, I'm drawing a picture of Micah right now, and his hand is up because he's going to be holding his little sister. And if I wanted his hand to be moving her closer, so that maybe Castaspella is like, I don't know, like closer to him, like from here to here. I would have to move Casta over a few frames until she's transitioned there. So it's really a matter of moving the pictures in a way that looks natural, and I'm not the best at this myself because I'm limited by iMovie. If you guys have any programs that work for iPad for animatics that would work better for doing animatics, please let me know because this is a mess. I hate iMovie sometimes because it's so limited. So I hope that answers your question. I'm going to do it in a more thorough way in a video, and I know that was probably a really bad explanation. It's just these things take time. I have one more question from Nana Banana, and she says, okay, cool, digital art. How, why, help, YouTube's not helping. Okay, so Nana is actually a friend of mine, and so she's asking me how to do digital art. And digital art, for me at least, it was the same as it was actually this pretty similar to like paper art. I know that sounds weird, but the only thing that digital art has that paper art doesn't is the advantage of layers. And the layers are my best friend, okay? But other than that, digital art for me at least was like, it was pretty much the same as paper art for me. It wasn't that hard to figure out. I used to draw on my phone, and I had an S Pen. And that's how I started out, but then I got my iPad for Christmas, and that was much better. And so that's kind of how I got into digital art. I can't really help with like teaching digital art very well because, as I said, I'm really awkward and unscripted. And yeah, I'm sorry. I hope that kind of helps because I don't really know how to teach very well. And that is, I believe, to be the final question. Thank you all for watching this video. And Allure is going to be out on Sunday, and so I hope you guys are going to stick around for that because it's going to be awesome. Until then, thank you for all your questions. Please leave more. You can leave them in the comments section or you can leave them in on my Wattpad account at Joy Everett 715. That is Joy Everett 715 for